I believe less in God than you do. Yeah.
Okay. What if I told you after this conversation, there won't be a shadow of a doubt that God exists in your mind's eye?
You know, just in front of me.
Please.
Constantly giving us love, but we're the ones rejecting it. The moment you open your heart to it, you realize, wow. So now, let's get down to the nitty gritty, okay, guys? First and foremost, do you believe in God?
Yes. Kind of. Depends.
Perfect. This is the nicest conversation I've ever had so far today. Okay, you believe, you're kind of agnostic, I guess you would say.
Yeah.
So you don't know if God exists, but you also, like, he might exist, but he might not.
Yeah. It's kind of
honestly, if there is, then okay. If there isn't, then okay.
Yeah.
But it's you don't know if he exists, or that's the main thing. You have no idea.
Precisely.
Yeah, exactly.
But if he doesn't, then I don't care.
Right.
No offense to anyone in the world.
Yeah, no offense.
Of course,
I mean,
of course.
anyone can have any belief.
Okay. So next thing I gotta ask is, do you both share that same belief?
I would say so.
Yeah.
I think I believe less in God than you do. Yeah.
Okay. What if I told you after this conversation, there won't be a shadow of a doubt that God exists in your mind's eye?
You know, just in front of me.
Please.
Okay. Don't approach this conversation as, oh, I'm gonna try to put up walls so he doesn't convince me, so I can prove that he can't do it. Like,
okay.
Like, actually try. Like, if honestly, this will only work if you're actually willing to
like I'm open to it. I'm just
like,
I'm LGBTQ, so I'm LGBTQ, so I find it hard to invite God into my life sometimes.
Because most religious people would disagree with what the LGBTQ plus community is doing. That's why, yeah? Does that make sense? Hello? Bro, I feel like you're distracted with the chat. I'm trying to...
Yeah.
Honestly, just flip it. I ignored it. Yeah, honestly, it's okay.
Oh, no!
I'm gonna turn it off.
Okay, so basically, one of the reasons why you think God might not exist, or like there's doubt, is because you're LGBTQ plus in that community, in that spectrum, and most religious people disagree with that community.
Okay.
Does that make sense? Is that why? I just want to understand your logic.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Okay.
I know a lot of good nice stuff.
Okay, before we dive in, I need you to understand that I was born in a religion. I left it, and then I came back. So I know how it feels Muslim.
Do you mind that? Are you Christian? Oh, Muslim?
I'm Muslim, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so...
I'm interested in that religion.
Okay, we'll talk about it after, for sure. Okay, so number one, I want you to delete the word God in your head. So to prove God's existence, you have to forget God entirely. Because the term God, you've been told as a kid and what you've seen in the media, this and that, forget God, okay? And by the way, what I'm going to explain, it doesn't advocate for Muslims or Christians or nothing. It just explains why God has to exist through logic and reason. That's the second point. I hate when people tell me, like, when I left, I hated when people brought me a book and said, yo, the verse is here, it's so clear. Like, bro, I don't believe in the book to begin with. Like, why are you giving me a book that I don't care about, you know? So we're going to drop faith entirely, and we're going to drop everything. The only thing we're going to care about is logic and reason. Do you guys agree that that's a good tool we can use?
Yeah.
So if I can logically make sense of it, would you then believe?
I would try harder to believe. I would look more into it. I feel like one conversation can't help me fully believe in something and go into something. I would probably look more into the situation.
Sure. I'm not saying you're going to commit your faith to a religion. I'm just like, forget religion. I'm just saying, if I logically show you why God has to exist,
I'd like to see that.
Yeah. Right. Assuming, like, guys, hypothetically, let's just say I have the magical powers to do that. Like, hypothetically.
Right.
If with your own eyes you saw how it doesn't make sense for him not to exist, would you then still doubt his existence?
I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, here's how...
Yeah.
Do you mind if I give an analogy, kind of?
Yeah, go there.
So, I think someone already said this, but I like saying. So, you look at an apartment building, and let's say, like, no one built that because we don't know that person. We don't know the builder. So the apartment built itself, basically. And let's go that to Earth and the universe and the world. Just because we haven't seen the builder doesn't mean that this built itself.
Right. I've heard that argument before. Yeah. What are your what are your
Sorry, I'm sorry.
what are your thoughts on that argument, by the way?
I'm sorry, what?
What are your thoughts on that argument, by the way?
I think it's logical.
Okay. By the way, that argument in philosophy is called a teleological or teleological argument. It's like because it's there, it has purpose. There must have been a designer. But drop teleological arguments because it requires a bit of faith. You know, a leap of faith, because you still don't see the creator. You don't get it. So just drop that even. Okay. If it makes sense to you in your head as to why God exists, then you would then have to believe that he exists because it makes sense to you. But if it doesn't make sense to you, then you wouldn't believe. If it makes sense, then you would, obviously. So I'm going to try to make sense of it. Okay. What's your names, by the way? Sorry?
My name? Our names?
Yeah.
I'm Cass. I'm Anna.
Cass and Annan?
Anna.
Anna. Oh, like Anna Banana from Freaky Friday.
Yeah.
Okay, so we got Cass and Anna Banana. All right. What are the pronouns? I have to make sure I like.
They, them. She, her.
Okay, so she, her, they, them. Okay, they, them, she, her. Okay, so Cass.
Thank you.
What would you need what do you need in order to exist?
My parents.
What do you guys think? You know what? Let's take you guys out of the equation. What do humans need to exist?
Food, water.
Sure. What is okay? So it just, by the way, guys, there's something in science called induction. Okay, and the concept of induction. Sorry.
A soul?
No. Forget this. No.
Not really.
The concept of induction is this. Okay, we just so happen to live in a world where there's gravity.
Right.
And because every single day gravity still does its thing, we then just believe that it's going to be like that for the rest of time. This is part of a scientific thing. It's like because it's been happening for so many years, it's probably going to continue to happen. Okay, so this is induction. Okay, they don't know for certain that it's going to stay, but through logic and reason, they're like, okay, if it's happened this many times before, then it's probably going to continue to happen again. This is a real scientific thing. Like, this is what scientists do. It's induction. It's the core premise to their theories. Do you get it? Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. So.
Oh yeah.
Okay. Right. So okay, you depend on plants, or sorry, you depend on food. What do foods depend on? I said plants. I'm nuts. I'm crazy.
Texas meat. Cows.
Cows. Sure. Okay. Sure. So now what do cows depend on? What do these animals depend on?
Again, food, water, recreation.
Sure. Okay. So it seems like it's all boiling down to water. So what is what does water depend on?
The water cycle.
By the way, it may not depend on something. You're allowed to say it's independent. You guys are looking at the chat. You guys are distracted, bro. Listen, honestly, put your phone to it. Like you guys are. Oh, you're not. Oh, you're looking down. I thought you were looking at the chat. Are you looking at the chat? You are, aren't you? Are you, Anna? I literally seen you guys both look at the chat. Anna, I literally. By the way, the reason why I know is because she has glasses on. She has glasses.
I'm listening. I'm sorry. I'm listening.
I can literally see the reflection from the glasses. Yeah. Okay. Anyways, so. Okay. So, does water depend on something or is it independent?
It's independent, basically, right?
Because it doesn't depend on anything.
I don't know. I don't do science. I'm failing science.
Don't look at me. Don't look at me.
I don't know. Can you tell us?
Sure. So I would say that water depends on Earth. I would say that. I would say that if Earth didn't exist, there wouldn't be water. That's my logic. Would you disagree with that?
I'm gonna stop it.
Listen. I have not contributed very much to the conversation.
Okay, whatever. She's leaving. All right.
No.
Please explain.
So I would say that water depends on Earth. Would you agree?
Yeah.
Like, is there any doubt in your mind so far in the conversation? Everything that I've said, is it 100%?
Yeah, pretty much.
Like if there wasn't Earth, there wouldn't be water. Like it can't just fly around in space.
Yeah,
It needs
exactly.
Okay, what does Earth depend on? Does it depend on anything?
It doesn't. It depends on the universe, which also has value. I mean, that's what the whole depends.
I would argue that Earth is characteristics to be a home for life. It depends on the sun. Without that sun, there would not be life. So I would say that Earth depends on the sun. Would you disagree with that?
No.
That makes sense. So far, is it 100%? I want to hear you're 100% all the way through.
Yeah. Yeah.
You're spitting facts right now.
Yeah.
Literally, right? That's what I'm saying. Okay, this is literally why I'm like, what the hell? Okay, the sun depends on what? The Milky Way, yeah?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, now I'm gonna like help a bit because we're gonna get more into the astronomical, like crazy.
Yeah,
words.
like I'm failing science.
It's okay. It's all good. It's all good. Just take okay. So the sun depends on the Milky Way. Now, 5,000 years ago, when they looked up at the sun, they didn't know, like they just saw it floating in the sky. They just thought that this thing floated in the sky. They thought that it depended on nothing. They thought that it just is. But that's because they were limited by technology. But now, with our modern day technology, we know that the sun isn't independent. It's indeed dependent on what? The Milky Way. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Or was I speaking too fast? Or sometimes I go rambling on for no reason.
No, I'm a very fast learner.
Okay, good. Okay, I'm just gonna keep talking like this then. 'Cause that's just how I like.
I listen to people a lot, so.
Sorry, you do, or you don't like people like that, or what? Oh, okay. Sorry, my bad. I'm just gonna keep going. Okay. Anyways, so 5,000 years ago, if somebody said, "Oh, I don't know," that the sun depends on the Milky, like they didn't know. Just because they didn't know, does that mean that the sun was independent? Obviously not. It's still dependent on something. Does that make sense? Like just because they didn't know at the time. Hello? Or you froze? You're freezing.
I'm thinking.
I am good, man.
Basically, what I'm saying is this: 5,000 years ago, they didn't know that the sun depended on something, right?
I still love the Earth. It's flat.
Like they didn't know that the sun depended on the Milky Way. That there was no technology to know the Milky Way and stuff 5,000 years ago. Because now let me ask you a question: just because they didn't know the sun depended on something, does that mean that the sun didn't depend on something?
That's correct.
I would disagree with that.
Wait.
Just because they didn't know, does that mean that the sun, like all they knew is that the sun is independent, it's flying in the sky. Just because they didn't know that the sun depended on something, does that mean that what they think is true? Like obviously, like for me it's like
No, sorry. We meant
sorry. We got the question wrong.
okay, it's okay. Yeah, because that's just like ignorant to say like, oh, just because I don't know, therefore it doesn't exist. Like, bro, and obviously, okay. In that case, in that realm, because we're talking about finite things and we're basing it off technology, right? Okay, again, forget God. Now we're here. We have our technology. You know what technology tells us? The farthest thing that we know is space-time. The concept of space. Space is the farthest our technology can get to right now. For now. There's no doubt in my mind in 10,000 years we're going to discover something that space depends on. The reason why I say that is, let me ask you guys a question. What makes more logical sense? If everything in the universe that we've talked about thus far, and anything that you can think of in the universe, if everything depends on something, it would be illogical or irrational to say, you know what, the space also doesn't depend on. It would be illogical to think space doesn't depend on something. How is everything else going to depend on something, but space doesn't? The reason why we think it doesn't depend on something is because we're limited by technology. But that's the same argument as the 5,000 year ago people. Just because we don't have the technology doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. That's number one. Point number two, the fact, and by the way, I'm not saying it depends on God. I'm just, whatever it is, I don't know what it is, but it must depend on something. Surely. Try to think of anything in the universe that's independent.
Shit, damn. Are we allowed to cuss?
Sorry?
I'm sorry. I don't.
Are we allowed to use profanity?
Go nuts, yeah. Swear, freaking do.
I can't. I actually can't do it.
Because it's impossible. It's because it's impossible. Everything depends on something. There's not one. I've done my research. By the way, I've talked to atheists. I've had big conversations. Like, there's not one person that can name one thing that's independent. Everything depends on something. It's kind of interesting. Like,
Yeah.
even space. Some people argued, wait a minute, space is independent because it depends on nothing. But technically, it depends on something. You know why?
Wow.
Pretend space is like a 10 by 10 grid. Okay, just for a second. Okay. That grid. By the way, it's not actually 10 by 10. It's like infinite. But let's just say it's 10 by 10.
Yeah.
Just to make it easier to understand. The concept of space depends on the things within it. Without the things in it, there would be no space. It's kind of it's kind of like saying a puzzle. A puzzle, in order for a puzzle to exist, it still depends on the pieces inside of it.
Facts.
You know what I'm saying? Like a cow depends on the cells inside of it. Humans depend on our blood and stuff. We depend on the things inside of us. So we're not independent. We depend on things inside of us. So space is now not independent, officially, because it's composed of stuff. Okay, so now this is where it gets crazy, okay? Because everything that we've mentioned depends on something, is there any doubt in your mind that space must then depend on something that we just haven't discovered yet?
It makes sense.
It does make sense because I mean, 5,000 years ago, people thought the Earth was flat.
You know what I mean? Like, do you honestly think that makes the most sense?
It does. I think it does make sense.
And I'm not saying it's God. Forget God, right? Like, there must be something. I don't know what it is.
The last moment.
Okay.
Nice say.
Okay. Now, by the way, the reason why I said what makes the most sense is because we can never know for certain. But technically, the concept of gravity, we don't know for certain either. Hello?
Well, everything has a gravitational force.
Right. So
Everything has a gravitational force.
So remember why I said so induction is the idea in science. And if you go against induction, then you're going against science. The concept of induction means because it's happened so many times before, it's probably going to happen again. Scientists just look at gravity and they're like, wow, gravity's always been here so far. So it's probably going to be here in the future. You get it? So I'm using kind of the same tools that scientists are using. If so far everything has a dependency, it would then be illogical to think that space doesn't. So it probably has one too. Does that make sense or no?
It does.
Okay, that thing that space depends on, that we now know that there must be something. We just don't know what it is. That thing, we don't know what it is, so let's give it a name. Let's call it A, okay?
Yeah, okay.
Are you with me?
We don't do math, but okay, yeah.
Okay, let's just call it thing 1.
Perfect.
Okay.
Yeah. That's a lot better.
Wouldn't thing 1 depend on something 2 then, with that analogy? With that logic?
Like exponential growth.
Thing 1? So the question is, would thing 1 depend on something? Would thing... It wouldn't be exponential growth?
Or like...
Honestly, man, I'm not really too good at math. Like, that confuses me. Like, okay, let's keep it super simple. Thing 1. Would thing 1 depend on something? Yes or no?
Thing 2.
What? Are you sure?
Thing 2 depends on thing 3.
And then it would go to thing 4.
Thing 5, thing 6, thing 7.
Numbers are infinite, so...
It would go on forever, right?
Yeah.
Okay, again, we're limited by what we know. So, if it goes on forever, I have to ask you a question. What do you know about infinity? If, like, so for example, if I told you what's the start to infinity, what would you say?
There's no start or end to infinity.
Exactly. So if it went on forever, thing 1, thing 2, thing whatever, infinite, there would never be a start.
Right.
Ever. There would never be a start.
Because it can also go to negatives. Like negative 1,
Yeah.
negative 3, negative 4,
Exactly.
negative 5.
There would never be a start. Like, the start doesn't exist. There's no start. If there's no start in this dependency cycle, then how the frig are we here?
Stop making me have an existential crisis, please.
Does that make sense? Because an infinite regress, if it goes on for infinity backwards, then there wouldn't be a start. So that, and by the way, if you were to claim, yeah, so what, there's no start, then that means you're saying that everything doesn't exist because everything depends on the thing before it. So it's kind of
a simulation. Life is a simulation.
So would you guys agree then that an infinite regress doesn't logically make sense? Think about it. It's kind of a shock. It's kind of different.
Can you ask the question again?
Would you agree that if it kept on going forever, thing one, thing two, the concept of dependencies, if something depended on something forever, would you agree that that doesn't make sense? Because there would be no start?
I don't know how to answer that. I'm done, man.
Are you okay?
I'm fine. I'm in the middle of an existential crisis, but you know.
Can you keep going, please?
Please?
No, we can't. Because every step of the way, you have to fully believe what I'm saying. And I think you do, but you're kind of shook. Just take a second to think about what I just said.
Okay.
Because, by the way, if the sun disappeared, we wouldn't exist, but the space would still exist.
Yeah,
Right. The thing that, like, if this, basically what I'm saying is, if you say if you say thing one that depends on thing two, then everything thus far depends on thing two. There must be something that everything depends on. To say that it goes on forever means that there is nothing. There is no start, which means we wouldn't be here. What we're doing, by the way, is we're reverse engineering. We're looking at it backwards, from us to what the frick is going on. So an infinite regress does not logically make sense to me. Unless you can think of a way it can make sense. Let me know. I'm open to learning.
I can't.
Because it doesn't make sense. That doesn't make sense. That going on forever does not make sense. That's the problem. So would you agree to that or no?
I would agree.
Okay. Does your friend agree?
Yes.
Okay.
Sorry, she's like kind of.
Oh, shut up! I'm not looking at the phone.
No, she's like freaking out in the corner.
Okay. So now we have to be rational. We do exist. The concept of an infinite regress doesn't make sense because there's no start. Which means the only way we could exist is if there is a start. There must be a thing, ? There must be something that everything depends on. Would you agree or disagree? That is, by the way, necessary for everything. I'm not saying it's God. I'm just saying it's something. Let's call that thing ? Do you think ? Do you think ? Must exist?
Yeah.
It must, right? Like what? It has to. Like, it's not crazy. Okay. Now, by the way, again.
Okay, right now.
No.
By the way, I'm not saying it's God yet. We're not saying it's God because it could not be God. All we
just like.
Right.
It's okay. It's okay.
No, it's not okay.
Okay. All we're saying so far is this thing. Let's call it ? Okay, are you guys with me in calling it ?
Yes.
Okay. Alhamdulillah. Okay, so this ? Let's think about its characteristics. Can we think about its characteristics?
Sure.
Yeah.
Is it independent or is it dependent?
I don't. It's probably dependent on something else.
Well, if it depends on something else, then that thing would depend on something else, and that would go on forever, and then there wouldn't be a start. So whatever this thing is, must depend on nothing. Technically, it must be independent. Do you get it?
Yeah.
Does that make sense, or are you just saying, yeah, I need to understand?
No, it makes sense.
Like it must be independent, right?
It has to be. Because then it would work. It has to depend on something else.
Exactly. So now this ? Yeah, this ? Depends on nothing, right? These next words are why I will never, ever, ever, ever be an atheist, and why I will forever believe that God has to exist at 100% capacity. There is not one shadow of a doubt in my soul why God has to exist. Are you ready? It's about to get so shook.
Are you ready?
I'm not.
Are you okay?
Okay, phones down, focus. This next line will change everything. Like this next line will change your life. I promise. Like this next line,
Do it, please.
you're never ever gonna doubt God ever again. By the way, after this conversation, are you ready? It's about to get crazy. Like you're gonna be like, what the hell?
Okay.
Am I gonna follow up with that?
Okay, are you? Okay, one sec. My phone's about to die. Okay, honestly, forget my phone. This is more important. Okay, are you ready?
Yeah. Quick.
Okay. This thing doesn't need anything, right?
Right.
That means it could just be by itself. It could just live by itself.
Right.
Yes.
It can still be alive by itself.
Right.
If it can be alive by itself, then how are we here? It doesn't need us. It doesn't need anything. It could just be by itself. This thing, this question mark, is independent. It can be by itself. Before we were created, before this concept of space-time, like this question mark can just be. That means it doesn't need anything. But we are here. Which means, since there was nothing else but it must have been the only thing that decided for everything to happen.
Oh shit.
Because there was nothing else but it. So it must have been the decider of existence. It must have decided to start everything. Because it doesn't need anything other than itself. Do you get it?
Yes.
So this thing, now we have a characteristic. This thing now has a will. This thing now can make decisions.
That never happened.
Do you get it now?
Yeah.
So now we know that this question mark has a characteristic. That characteristic is that it has an ability to make a decision. Isn't that weird? This thing now has decision-making capabilities. Now what does decision-making imply, by the way? In order, are you okay?
No, I'm okay.
By the way, when I first realized this, I cried for a little bit, to be honest, because it blew my mind. So it's okay if you're going through emotions, like it's okay.
No.
Like it's all good. I'm being honest. I'm being honest. Like I actually cried when I first realized this because it was a crazy. So it's okay that you're going through these emotions. Like honestly. By the way, do you know what just happened? Why you're crying or why you're getting emotional? It's because it's not because your brain understood it. It's because it touched your heart just now. Just so you understand. Like it just touched your heart for the first time. That feeling that you had is called an angelic state. It's the feeling that where it's like everything is like, oh my god, it's all just made sense all at once. So like it's okay. Like it's okay to feel these things. Like you're okay. This is normal. It's shocking. That doubt in your heart went away. Your heart is now fully khalas. Like you're good. Alhamdulillah. Like you're good. Like
I literally can't think of the reason why that doesn't make sense. I literally can't find an excuse for how this doesn't make sense.
I know. But it gets crazier. I don't know if you're ready.
What?
Okay.
You good?
Yes, continue.
Would you like one of the cookies that you don't care for?
Don't let these emotions, like you can let these emotions out. It's like, it's okay. Like just be yourself. You know, it's okay.
I'm not even like that emotional person. Like I don't express.
I'm not either. I'm not either, and I still cried. It's okay. Like it touches everyone's heart. La ilaha illallah.
Are you making fun of me right now?
No. No, I'm not. I promise.
Okay, continue, please.
And by the way, you know what the issue is with society? Because like you said, like
charge your phone. We need to continue talking about this.
Oh yeah.
I'm fully. I'm like fully in for this.
Okay, I'll be quick. The moment it says 10%, I'll go charge it. It's at 20%. Just remind me. Okay, so basically, the problem is this: in society, we're so distracted by religion. We're so distracted by religion in society. Religion has made us feel like there's barriers between people, and religion disagrees with certain communities, this and that, which is why your heart will always be resistant to the concept of God. But I said delete it, and because you deleted it, you're able to understand it a lot better. Because the point of religion is like humans put up these walls. It's so annoying. It was never meant to be like that, I don't think. Like the concept of walls, it's so annoying. Anyways, okay. Here's where it gets nuts, okay? It could have been by itself. but it isn't, right? But everything else exists, and because there was only it, there was only it, that means it must have made the decision. You agree with that, right?
Yeah.
Okay, this thing.
Okay. Hold on, sorry. Okay, I just want to make sure yeah, he's fine. Okay.
Okay, this thing made a decision. What does that imply? In order for me to make a decision, like to open this and close this, it requires some sort of intellect capabilities. That's a decision. So now we know that it must be intelligent. It must be intelligent, especially because it created space-time. So now we know this thing must not only be intelligent, but it must be the most intelligent. Now we know it's the most intelligent, and now we know that, like, does that make sense? Is that kind of cool?
Yes.
Okay, can I ask you a couple of questions? Is it needed by everything?
Yeah, because all of them have done it.
Okay. Did something create it? Did it have a father?
No, because then it would be dependent on that.
Because it's outside space and time. You can never imagine it. You can't compare it to anything. Would you agree to that?
Yeah.
Because it's literally outside our conception. You can never imagine it, right? Would you agree to that?
What? Yeah.
Okay. That's it. Now, as of today, you will never not believe God exists, because what we just described, that question mark, I said question mark, but it's called God. Some people call it God. I call it Allah. Some people call it whatever. Some people, like, one person I talked to, they believed it exists, but they didn't want to call it God. They were too scared. That thing is God.
That's cool.
Welcome to the club. Welcome to.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. Like, how do you feel?
I don't know. Like in my mind, like I'm trying to think of ways to not believe. I'm trying to think of like.
Yeah, try your best. Every atheist that I've ever spoken to believed in God, except for one. And all of them did their research. By the way, it's not just you thinking.
I'm trying to think.
They all did their research. Not one of them could come back to me with anything that's like feasible. Like nobody could.
I'm trying to think of also like why question mark. I don't know what like if I God I don't know what to call it. Question mark. But yes. I'm trying to think why question mark created and decided to create what he did.
Yeah.
What not he question mark.
It. I say it, he, whatever. This question mark, yeah. So the why would it create? The way I see it is this: if it created me, and it's the sustainer, it's needed by all, then I, as a creation, should be worshiping it all the time. Technically, like it literally created everything. You know what I mean? Like I'm at its mercy at all times. Like I should be worshiping this thing, which is kind of cool because like, what else should I be doing? You know what I mean? The reason why I think it loves me is because it didn't have to give me a mother. It didn't have to give you a mother. A mother loves its creation unconditionally. A mother loves its child unconditionally. It's kind of poetic because it loves us unconditionally. So what did it do? It gave a piece of itself inside your mother. That's why your mother loves you unconditionally, because the mother's love is a reflection of its love towards you. But it loves you more than your mother does. It literally gave you your mother. It gave you your mother just to show you how merciful it is. So now we know that it must love us too. It's the most loving. It didn't have to do this. It's so loving. It literally loves everything. Yeah, it's kind of cool. Take a second. I'm gonna get water. I'll be right back.
Okay.
Oh my god. Yes, bless her. Bless her.
Okay.
Someone will help me say something. Or you are. Okay. Do you feel loved?
Like, yeah, that's the thing. And what's scary, what's crazy is this. This thing is constantly giving us love, but we're the ones rejecting it. The moment you open your heart to it, you realize, wow. So now, whatever, like, thing, you know, when earlier you told me, like, oh, just, anyways, bro, like, that's it. Like, now, any problem that you have in life, any issues that you have, you'll always know it's there, and you'll always know that it loves you, which means anything that happens to you is for you. So if you ever go through a circumstance, any hardship, you know it's for a reason. It comes with ease. It's very beautiful. It's so poetic, the way it designed everything. It's so intelligent. Like, I'm always in shock. It's crazy, isn't it? Like, okay.
I'm sorry. I'm like,
It's okay. No, don't worry about it. So, anyways, it's okay. So basically, when I had this realization of it, I started, bro. I went nuts. I studied, like, bro. I went Confucius, Hinduism, bro. I studied like everything, bro. Like I went off, but I didn't read the details of the religion because I think that it would want us to acknowledge it. I think that it would want us to know that it's there. So what would it do? It would send us signs, I think. So what are these signs? And it blew my mind. I'm like, oh my god, these signs are called prophets. It literally already gave us signs. It's kind of cool. Like, it literally already did it. So then what I did is I studied and I realized that every religion describes God differently. Everyone describes God differently. Hindus believe in multiple gods. The Christians believe in the concept of one God, but it's three. And a lot say that Jesus is God. But we already did, through logic, Jesus can never be God because Jesus is a human.
And he depended on something.
Yes, water. He needed to sleep. And we can see him, which means he's comparable to something. Right. The only religion, and I'm still researching, but the only religion, which is why I fully submitted, is Islam. But the reason why is because there's this little thing, okay? I'm going to send it to you. It's, okay, actually, I'm just going to read it. Can I read it? It's like literally 4 seconds. It's like 30 seconds, not even. Can I read it? Okay. So, Qul huwallahu ahad. This is a verse in the Quran. This is it describing itself. This is God describing itself. Qul huwallahu ahad. Look at how poetic it is. This is what this word means in English. He is Allah. So now the question mark, we have a name for it. It's called Allah. One and indivisible. This means that it's one and it can't, like, it's just one, it's indivisible. So now we know it's one. Okay. This is something we already knew through logic. Okay. Allahu Samad. Allahu Samad. Allah, which is now the question mark, right? Allah, the sustainer needed by all. So far, does that match our description of God? The sustainer needed by all. Everything depends on it. So far, okay, so far it matches the description. Lam yalid wa lam yulad. Lam yalid wa lam yulad.
Are you vibing?
I'm vibing.
Oh, you can hear it, huh?
Yeah.
Okay, lam yalid wa lam yulad. He has never had offspring, which means, and nor was he born, which means he was uncreated. He always was. He's independent. He has never had offspring, nor was he born. He wasn't born, because to say something is born means it didn't exist at one point. Does that make sense? It's kind of cool.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Okay, this is the last line. This one line converted me to Islam. وَلَمْ يَكُنْ لَهُ كُفُوًا أَحَدٌ. And there is none comparable to him. Every religion compares him to something. This is the only religion that doesn't compare him to anything. It actually says, you can't compare me. Don't even try. That's why I'm Muslim. That's it. That's my whole belief. Because it's... And there's a bunch of other things. Like, it's kind of cool how this book has no contradictions, but every other one does. It's kind of cool how this book has so many, like... It has so many things that it's not supposed to make sense. There's, like, it's hard to explain, bro. It's so poetic if you just listen to it. Just listen to it and you're gonna be like, wow. It's become so obvious that it's it. That question mark is it trying to talk to us. Bro, do you know what's crazy?
Mm-hmm.
If you right now burned this book, if you snapped your fingers and you burned this book, and every single book got burned, and we deleted the internet so we can't get access to it, you know within 1 hour, the same exact copy will pop up all across the world? Do you know how? because it's written in such an eloquent way that it's easily memorizable by a 9-year-old kid. But yet, it's so complex that it explains everything. There is no literature that comes close to it. In the Quran, you know what it tells us? It says, guys, go try to read any other book. You're not going to find anything like this one. He literally challenges every other one. It's so obvious, but just do your own research. I don't want to, like, you know what I mean? Like, I just want you to, like, really get close to it. Because you acknowledge it, I think it would reward you for that. But it would also want you to keep seeking truth. Seek your truth. Do your research. You're going to come to the same conclusion that I came to. I know you will, but alhamdulillah.
I'm sorry.
Anyways, that's how does it feel, bro? Like, that's it. That's pretty much it. So this is, like, by the way, you right now technically agree with the characteristics of how we describe God, which means you disagree with how every other religion describes God. Like, I feel like I'm talking to you, and I feel like you're basically Muslim already, to be honest. But like, yo, do your research. Like, that's like, bro, the fact that you agree with the definition of God here means you disagree with every other definition of God, which means you've already done your research. Khalas, bro, you're basically already Muslim. Like, it's game over. Like, it's okay, bro. It's kind of cool.
You bamboozled us.
Sorry?
Bamboozled us.
It's the truth though. Like, it's crazy.